Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back to Paris History Advocate Hemingway. And today we're talking about more of Claudine's favorite books. We know Claudine is a book extraordinaire. She knows so many wonderful books. This is where she gets all her amazing information from. So now you can be just like Claudine and get your hands on all this great information. You might need to speak some French, maybe, but we'll learn more about that now from Claudine.
I think most of these are all in English, so this is helpful. And the books that we're going to talk about today are some of my favorites by one of my very favorite authors, and a few other ones. But you could find these, you could pretty much find these, on Amazon and some of his titles you could definitely find at a lot of bookstores, in like the travel section, but. There is one gentleman, he's an Australian, but he lives in Paris. He's lived here for quite a few decades. And he's somebody that's become a good friend of mine. And that is a gentleman named John Baxter. And I know that some of you guys know who he is. I've shared some of my favorite books of his before in my newsletters and online on Instagram and on my website. But he is one of the best resources. His books are fantastic, where they kind of they'll talk about Paris but break it down into little stories. So it's really fun books to just pick up and read all the way through, or come back later and read one, a few stories here or there. But they're really great. So John Baxter is from Australia originally. He spent some time in the US, and then he ended up coming back and lived in London for a little bit, and then he met a woman, and she was French, came back to Paris, and they got married. He now has an adult daughter, and he is really fantastic, and he's always working on books. I love meeting with him and talking. He has a new book coming out, which I'll tell you about too, but he's written over 40 books. And so when I've sat down and talked to him about some things I'm working on, and then I'm like, well, what do you think about this? And he's like, it just, when it clicks, it clicks. I'm like, seriously? You've written 40 books. You can't give me anything else.
I love that. It clicks,
like clicks. Yeah, just like one little piece of wisdom here. But he's fantastic. And any moment I spend with him is one of my very favorites. But for some of them, and some of his books you might already know. But these are my ones that are my favorites, and I have all these on my website as well. But one of them is called The Chronicles of Old Paris. It's a fantastic book, looking at historical figures of France. You have anybody from Saint Denis, the saint that became a saint because his head was chopped off, and he walked from Montmartre over to what is now known as Saint Denis till he fell to his death, finally dropped to the ground. Ernest Hemingway, of course, the Opera Garnier, and even Notre Dame. The book gives you a short but detailed history on some of the greatest stories of Paris. Each chapter is really easy to read, and just they're shorter, but they give you a lot of details on the subject. He is one of the people that I know how he researched, and we talk about that all the time, because that's sometimes the funnest part of doing any of these things is the research. And he really does the research. And so if I'm reading it and he's done it, I pretty much am like, I know this is correct, because you don't always get that with all these things. People sometimes just wing it. Another one that's really great is The Golden Moments of Paris. It's a guide to the 1920s in Paris, basically going from right after World War I to World War II. And that's really when we had the lost generation. So that was the Fitzgeralds and Hemingway and Gertrude Stein, where you could live for cheap, you could drink for really cheap, and was really the perfect place for the Americans escaping the Prohibition years. You also have about Matisse versus Picasso. He also has a little thing in there about Henri Landru, who we did a double episode about, our French Bluebeard. You remember, that killed all the women in the oven?
Yep.
Yeah. And he even has a little chapter about the unknown woman of the Seine, that there was this woman that was found in the Seine, and back then the morgue was right at the end of Ile de la Cité, which is kind of right past Notre Dame, and the morgue was there, and it was like the thing to do, where they would put these bodies in the window, and people would like line up and walk by every day to be like, oh, let's go see who's in the window today.
Gross.
Really kind of weird. But there was this woman that was found in the Seine. She died. They still to this day don't know who she is, but here's something's really weird. They use that face of her, that if you have ever taken a CPR class in your life, and you know, the anatomical Annie, I think is what everybody called her. Because I remember taking the classes and you'd have to say, Annie, are you okay? Are you okay? The face that when you're learning how to do CPR and you're blowing into her mouth is the face of the woman they found in the Seine.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
That's really wild.
It's very wild. Yeah, so that's really, and it's literally like that around the world.
Gosh, that's wild.
Yeah,
Wow.
very strange. He did another one called Eating Eternity, Food, Art, and Literature in France. It's really fantastic. He is also a amazing chef. I've been lucky enough to have his cooking many times. And now I always request, he does some favorite things. So we get together for lunch. I was like, can you make that salad again? But he's a really great chef, and he has done quite a few books, and it breaks down about food, cheeses, what, you know, the different cheeses for the different times of the year, the best ones, the wine, and basically how food is incorporated in art and literature in France. He had a chapter about absinthe, the green fairy, that, you know, the liqueur that drove Oscar Wilde mad, and has been painted by Degas and Manet and everybody. It's another really great one. I love that one. When I first found him, I found John because I found this book at a bookstore, and it was called Cooking for Claudine. And I was like, what? I got to have this. I don't even know what it's about. Because my name is not very common. And I see this book and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I read it and then I loved it. And then I was like, what other books of his are there? And then I looked one day on his website and saw that he did these literary tours. And so I reached out to him and did this tour with him. And then we've become friends. But the book Cooking for Claudine, it's been redone. It's old. It's like, I think it's like from 2011. Again, everything's 2011. But they republished it under a different name, which I think is called The Immovable Feast. But Claudine is the name of his mother-in-law. So I call her so whenever I talk, she's in her late 90s now. So I always say, how's the original Claudine?
That's so cute though. I love that.
I know she was a professor at the Sorbonne.
Wow, that's really
It's really cool. But that's how I found him. A book that he did, another one that's called A Year in Paris, Season by Season in the City of Light. And it's really interesting, has all these different stories about the seasons and the different things of the year, like when they closed down the Champs-Élysées and the farmers covered it with wheat. There's a story in there about the revolutionary calendar when it was a 10-day week. It's a really great book. And they're all really done. They have like the great pages where it's the deckled pages on the edge, you know, so it's not like a straight, you know, cut of paper. It just feels like they're these really old books. They're really, I love those. But another one that's really fun, if you're coming to Paris, and even if you just like download this and have it on your Kindle, it's a great thing to have while you're here. He did 3 books called The Three Great Neighborhoods. He did one about Saint-Germain-des-Prés, one about Montmartre, and then one about Montparnasse. And it's great because each of these books have stories about the famous people that lived in those areas. You should definitely read that one about Montmartre.
sure.
But they're really great. They just have so much information and little stories. Some of the stories you might have read in some of the other books as well, or the same, you know, because it's like if you've got Hemingway in one and you have them in other ones, you know, some of that stuff is, some of that stuff kind of floats between them. But they are really great. I mean, I would even use those almost as guidebooks, as things. If you're staying in one of those areas, get that book, download it, read it on the plane on your way over. It's a really fun way to do it. One of his most famous book though is called The Most Beautiful Walk in Paris. And it's absolutely amazing. And it's just that. It's like all these different walks and going through Paris and all the different things you see. And he's really a fantastic storyteller with the way that he tells these stories and really brings it to life. That's one that I really love. And then he has a new one coming out that's coming out in the next month or so, and it's called Of Love in Paris. And I don't know, a year and a half ago or so, we were talking, and I'm always like, "What are you working on?" And he told me he's writing this book about famous lovers of Paris. And then I said, "Well, who's going to be in it?" And then he was telling me, and it's kind of not all people. Like there's Napoleon and Josephine, but it's not all these famous people everybody knows. So he's like, "Well, do you have any ideas?" And so I gave him a few. And so he's added some of the more obscure ones that are the really great stories, but not ones that everybody knows. And that's what he and I love to share. So that comes out anytime now. And then he's going to do an event at Shakespeare and Company sometime in October.
Wow, we gotta go.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to be there. I'll probably walk, we don't live very far apart. So I'll go over and we'll head on over there to go see that. But you could find that it says some things say September 1st that the book comes out. Some places say October 1st. But it'll be soon. And I checked on Shakespeare and Company and they don't have anything listed for it yet, but all of his books are good. He actually writes a bunch of books about, as he was actually in, the business of, with screenplays and everything. He's like the stories he tells me are just, I love all of them. But he's also written a bunch of biographies about, his latest one was about Charles Boyer. He's done ones about Spielberg and Lucas and Woody Allen and Fellini, some other really, really cool books. So he gave me his George Lucas one for my mom as big Star Wars nerd. Well, the old Star Wars. I don't know, like all the other ones. But another favorite author that I love, his books, is by David Downey, and he wrote 2 different books that are great. And I pick these up and flip through them all the time. One of them is called Paris, Journey into the City of Light. Again, it's like each chapter is kind of a different, little story about Paris. But one of my favorite ones, and I reference it all the time when I give tours, is the paragraph or the chapter that he did. It's all about the Jardin de Luxembourg. And he went there one day and he got there when it opened and he stayed until it closed. So it opens right after sunrise and it closes before sunset. So depending on the time of the year, it could be 10:30 at night or it could be 4:15 at night, which is coming up in the winter. So but he did this, and it's fascinating because he said by the end of it, he could figure out by the way people walked which of the Luxembourg chairs they'd go to, because there's 3 kinds of chairs. There's a straight back one, there's a straight back with arms, and then there's the recliner one that leans way back. And he said by the end of the day, he could pick them out like 100% accuracy, like that looks like a straight back, that looks like a reclining chair. And sometimes I've taken people in there, I've had a group of people that tested out all 3 and decided which one was their favorite.
That's so funny. And it's funny you used to have to pay for them based on comfort.
Yeah, that long time ago, you used to actually have to pay for them. And they were not, I mean, I have pictures that my grandparents took of those chairs that you had to pay for, and they were not good chairs. They were not the chairs you have today. They were like these spindly, wiry things.
Yeah, they didn't even look that great.
No, they didn't. But now, maybe they should charge for them, because it's funny because you go in there, especially lately when it's been really nice out. There's people that is one person and they've got 4 or 5 chairs, because they have one they put their feet on, one they put their bag on, one they put their lunch on. And it's like, okay, you need maybe 2 chairs max.
Yeah, seriously, but I like all the combinations.
I do. And nothing's better than a Luxembourg chair by the Fontaine de Medici with a book on a beautiful warm day. It's like the best thing to do. The other one that he wrote is he wrote this other great book called A Passion for Paris, Romanticism and Romance in the City of Light. This is one of my favorite periods. We've done multiple episodes about the romantic movement at that period in Paris and in France. This one has all these great stories about, there's the stories about Delacroix and Baudelaire and the love triangle of Victor Hugo. Really great. Those two books, his two books, I reference and pick up and read little things out of it all the time. I absolutely love them. But there's so many really great ones that you could find. John has other ones that he's also done. Paris at the End of the World is all about the time during World War I. I already mentioned the Cooking for Claudine. There's the one that's 5 Nights in Paris. It's basically focused on 5 different neighborhoods. And all of those are, there's just so many of them that are really great. And, you can find all of these on Amazon. When you come to Paris, there's a couple places if you want English books. Of course, there's Shakespeare and Company. There's also the Red Wheelbarrow that's on Rue de Medicis, right across from the Jardin de Luxembourg. Another place that I love is the San Francisco Book Company. It's a tiny little shop that's in the Odeon area. And all of these bookstores are basically in Saint-Germain, Odeon. Shakespeare and Company is down across from Notre Dame, but on the left bank. But San Francisco Book Company is small and it's all used books. And so I recently went in there and found the exhibition catalog of something that was at the Musée Milo years ago. And I mean, it was not cheap, but I was so excited I actually found it. Because it's all about the exhibit they did. It's called 21 Rue de la Boîte, and it's about the exhibition they did of the art from Paul Rosenberg, his gallery, that was a lot of it was looted by the Nazis. And so they had a bunch of things, the exhibit of paintings that had been stolen by the Nazis. And so when I saw that book, I was like literally gasped and had to get it. But those are the places you can find some really cool things. There's the Abbey bookstore that's also going between there and Shakespeare and Company. The Abbey bookstore is another English one. And that's one of those ones that just, roll up your sleeves and start digging and looking through, that you could find some pretty great things. In the US in Portland, Oregon, there's the amazing Powell's bookstore, which you could find a lot of these books in it as well. Maybe some of them were the ones I once owned. But there's so many really cool places. And as far as French books, if you're looking, there's the Monuments of Paris bookstore that's at the Hôtel du Soleil, really, right next to Place des Vosges. There's the Piéton bookstore, which is tiny, and it's right on the edge of the right bank, right across from Ile Saint-Louis. They have amazing books all about Paris. Again, they're all going to be in French. And then, of course, if you go to the Louvre and the Orsay, both of them have double gift shops. One gift shop has kind of the trinkets and things, and then the other one has books. And those usually have a small section of English books. Right now, the Louvre, when you get up to the top of the escalator where the bookstore is a huge island in the middle, and it's all books in English. And it's, some of them are art books, some are history books. So you can find those if you, really want to get brave. And it's something that if you really want to research and know more about, and it's more obscure, you got to find it in French. And then, you could always use your Google Translate on your phone and point the camera at it and take a picture, and it translates it for you. But there's lots of great places. Of course, there's the Bouquinistes, which are right now everybody's talking about because the city of Paris is going to take them down during the Olympics. And people are really up in arms about this, but I really doubt the Bouquinistes would be working on that time anyway, because it's going to be madhouse. And the opening ceremonies goes down the Seine. And if you've walked down the Seine, when those are there, you can't see the water. So, and there's going to be, hundreds of thousands of people here. They are protected by UNESCO. And so they will be put back after those few weeks of the Olympics. But everybody's pretty upset about those right now. But you can, sometimes you can find some really great books. Sometimes you can find some in English at those places. I would say probably half of those bouquinistes now are just filled with, trinkets, and they're not supposed to. They're still supposed to sell like 80% books, but some of them are just basically, keychains and people selling locks and magnets. But you still can find some really great things. But have no fear, they will come back. They might just come down for the Olympics.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea because, like you said, it's going to be so many people. It's going to be a lot of things going on, and we don't want to destroy them. So it'd be nice to bring them back after. And I think it's just fun to go in bookstores in general, just looking around. That's part of the fun. The whole experience is the journey of paging through. And there's so many great bookstores in Paris.
There's so many. I mean, especially, French ones, there's so many of those. I mean, just on Rue de l'Odéon, there's 3 of them. Rue de l'Odéon is kind of basically, the epicenter of literary Paris at one point in time, and where the second version of the original and best version of Shakespeare and Company was. But you can go in there and find some great things. And sometimes, I've had clients that just want to buy a book that's in French from a used bookstore just to have on their shelf as a nice little reminder. And you could sometimes pick those up for like €1 or 2. So it's kind of fun little reminders of where you are here. Start a little bookshelf. If you come every year, come buy a different book and save it and date the inside.
Good little souvenir. And make sure you head over to ClaudineHemingway.com to learn more, to check out links to these books, to hire her for a tour, and join her on her Patreon to go for live walks around Paris via internet. So you don't even have to be in Paris to visit. There's so much going on. And make sure you guys tune in next week.
Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.